Imagine a world where a single company was richer and more powerful than Apple, Google, and Amazon combined. A corporation that commanded its own armies, minted its own currency, and ruled over vast territories like a sovereign state. For 2 centuries, the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC, was that titan? It was the first multinational corporation, the first company to issue stock, and an empire of trade that stretched from Amsterdam to Asia. But this is not the story of how greatness rises. This is the story of how it ends. This is the final scene. The slow, agonizing death of the wealthiest corporation in human history. Our story begins not in the bustling ports of the VOC's golden age, but in their haunting silence. The late 18th century, once mighty harbors in Amsterdam are now eerily quiet. The great wooden docks, where fleets laden with spices and silks once arrived to fanfare, are now rotting, reclaimed by weeds and seawater. Warehouses, cavernous and grand, stand empty, their doors creaking in the wind, echoing with the ghosts of forgotten commerce. The air, once thick with the scent of cloves, nutmeg, and ambition, now carries only the damp smell of decay. A giant is on its knees, and the world is watching it breathe its last. In Amsterdam, within the grand headquarters of the VOC, the heart of the empire is failing. We walk through long, dim hallways where shadows dance like specters. The once bustling boardrooms, where men decided the fates of nations with a flick of a pen, are now silent tombs. Sunlight struggles through dusty windows, illuminating tables where historic treaties were signed. The leather on the grand chairs is cracked and faded, worn down by generations of power. The company's ledgers, once filled with unimaginable profits, now bleed red ink. Debt, mismanagement, and corruption have become the final entries in a 200-year saga of wealth. The faces of the aging directors, the Huron 17, tell the true story. They sit in heavy silence, their expressions a mask of strained composure, struggling to hide the sheer panic of men who know they are steering a legendary ship straight into an abyss. They are the custodians of a legacy, and they are watching it crumble in their hands. The soul of the VOC was always its ships, the magnificent East Indiaman. These floating fortresses were symbols of Dutch dominance, conquering oceans and connecting continents. But now they are symbols of decline. We see the last of them limping back into harbor, not with pride, but with shame. Their masts are broken, their sails torn to shreds by relentless storms and battles they could no longer win. The crews are skeletal, decimated by disease and desertion. These are ghost ships, spectral reminders of a power that has faded. Maps in the company's offices are no longer charts of conquest, but tombstones. Red crosses mark the locations of lost vessels, swallowed by the sea. Entire expeditions vanished without a trace. Trading posts, once jewels in the company's crown, are marked as overrun or abandoned, lost to rising competitors like the British East India Company. The arteries of the empire have been severed, and the giant is bleeding out. The desperation is palpable, not just in Amsterdam, but thousands of miles away. We see the final letters, the last correspondence from the empire's edge. In Batavia, the capital of the Dutch East Indies, the Governor-General writes by candlelight, his face etched with exhaustion. His letters are not grand reports of profit, but desperate pleas. He begs for more ships, more soldiers, more money resources that Amsterdam no longer has. Commanders of remote forts describe shortages of gunpowder and food, warning that they cannot hold out much longer. Merchants send frantic warnings of impending bankruptcy, their supply lines cut off, their warehouses looted. Each letter, stained with ink and sealed with wax, is a cry for help that goes unanswered. The careful, elegant script of the 18th century cannot hide the panic in the words. The empire is being starved into submission, not by a foreign army, but by its own internal decay. While the VOC was dying from within, the world outside was moving on. A new era was dawning, and the company was being left behind in the dark. The Industrial Revolution was transforming Europe. In the shipyards of Britain and France, new, faster, more efficient vessels were being built, powered by innovation and a ruthless competitive spirit. These ships easily overtook the aging, cumbersome East Indiaman of the VOC. The global political landscape was also shifting. Old alliances crumbled. Asian kingdoms, once bound by treaties to the Dutch, saw their weakness and broke away, signing new, more favorable deals with the British. Global trade routes were being redrawn, and the VOC was no longer at the center of the map. Merchants, driven by profit, followed the new currents of commerce, abandoning the Dutch for more reliable partners. The world had turned its back on the once-unrivaled giant. The VOC was now an island, isolated and irrelevant in a world it once dominated. The end came not with a single, dramatic bang, but with a series of tremors that brought the entire structure crashing down. The collapse was inevitable. News of the company's catastrophic debts finally hit the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, a market the VOC itself had helped create. Panic erupted. Shareholders, whose families had built fortunes on VOC stock, rushed to sell, but it was too late. The shares were worthless. The Dutch government, which had for so long profited from the company's success, could no longer ignore the rot. Inspectors were sent in, seizing documents and uncovering a level of corruption and mismanagement that shocked the nation. We see a montage of the final, humiliating moments. The iconic VOC logo, a symbol of global power for 2 centuries, being pried off the facades of buildings. Clerks hand out the last pay packets, with barely enough coin to cover a week's wages. The company was too big, too corrupt, too heavy with the weight of its own history. It was too heavy to stand. December 31st, 1799, the last day. The Dutch government, now the Batavian Republic, makes the official announcement. The Verenigd-Oost-Indische Compagnie is formally dissolved. Its territories, its assets, and its colossal mountain of debt are nationalized, absorbed by the state. In the company's silent headquarters, accountants close the final ledgers. A single clerk with a heavy heart makes the very last entry in the company's books, closing a story that spanned 200 years. One by one, the candles in the great halls are extinguished, plunging the rooms into darkness. Thousands of miles away, in Batavia, as the sun sets over the Indian Ocean, the VOC flag is lowered for the last time. The symbolic death of the world's first and greatest corporation is complete. An empire built on trade had become an empire of ghosts. Our final scene. A lone East Indiaman, the last of its kind, drifts silently into a thick, gray fog. Its sails are tattered, its hull is worn. It doesn't sail towards a destination. It simply disappears into the horizon, an echo of a bygone age. It is the final, haunting image of a fallen titan, the ashes of an empire that once held the world in its grasp, now scattered by the winds of change. The richest company in history was no more, a powerful lesson that no matter how great, how rich, or how powerful, nothing lasts forever. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into history compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories about the empires that shaped our world.